One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Have you been wanting to start a podcast? You've been thinking about it. It feels right. You just know this is the next thing that my business needs. Well, I encourage you to sign up for my 5-day podcast bootcamp. This is a thing that you have been looking for. It is a 5-day video series where I walk you through exactly how to start, launch, and market your podcast. And I throw in some more information about planning strategies and being consistent and how you can make the most out of your podcast from day one. So sign up for our 5-day Create Your Podcast Bootcamp at krystalprofit.com/podcast bootcamp. And do it already. You know that you've been wanting to, so just bite the bullet and join us. I don't know if it's the summertime feeling going on right now or what it is, but I feel extra excited. Maybe it's because I'm just had my afternoon coffee, but I am so pumped up about today's episode because this is a question I see all the time, which is, not really any different from the other things we talk about here on the podcast, because these are questions people ask me. It's questions I see asked in other communities that I just try to answer for you. But today is a very special question about social media and your podcast. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Krystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of podcasting, think of this show as the time-saving shortcut you've been looking for. So let's get right to it, shall we? Okay, so like I said, I am extra spunky and really excited about today's episode because it's all about social media accounts for your podcast, for your brand, for your business. There are multiple different ways that we can look at this, but I really just want to address, first of all, the options for social media. So make sure you go check out the show notes today. I'm going to run through a lot of things and I may just kind of skim over them really quickly here. But if you want to go back and be like, wait, what did she say about TikTok versus LinkedIn versus Twitter, like all the things, go check out the show notes for this episode, krystalprofit.com/episode 167. That's where you're going to find everything that we're talking about today. But the question is, should I have separate social media accounts for my podcast? So this question stems, actually, I saw this first from someone who I know already has a business and they've already created a brand per se on social media under their own name. And so they're like, okay, if I have this, so let's just take myself as an example. I am on most social media platforms as Krystal Profit TX, as in Texas. And so I have all of my accounts. That's my handle. And I have chosen to do all of my podcast promotions under my social media instead of creating, this is the handle at the Profit Podcast or at the Potty Report. I actually did create one for the Potty Report, but I don't do anything with it right now. I think I just wanted to claim it just to say I have it and I have big hopes for it in the future, but I ain't doing anything with it right now. It's just kind of sitting there dormant. But that's what I'm talking about. So I wanted to make sure and explain the question first. That way you could kind of see where we're going with this whole conversation or where it actually stemmed from. But okay, so first let's talk about all the options for you to promote your podcast on social media, because there are a lot of options, lots and lots of options. Okay, you have Facebook, where you can have a group or a page. You have Instagram, you have TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and I'm just going to throw YouTube in there as well. YouTube isn't really a social media platform, and Pinterest really isn't either. Pinterest is also a search engine, but I'm just going to throw those in there because those sometimes get grouped in with social media. And these are the ones that I see most of you working with. I know there's different ones. There's Snapchat and all kinds of, I'm sure, ones that I've never even heard of. I feel so old. I'm like, well, whatever the kids are doing these days, I'm sure there's tons of other platforms that you could be on. But these are the ones that I see the majority of podcasters I interact with working with, and they're using already either for their business or their personal brand. So if you already have these accounts set up, let's say you have a Facebook page and an Instagram, are these already business related or are they personal? Are they your personal accounts where like you have pictures of your family, your kids, like your dogs and that kind of thing, and you don't ever really talk about your business, or are they personal? Or do you operate as a personal brand? I would consider myself to operate as a personal brand, much like a lot of other people that I know who are also podcasters. I'm thinking of Amy Porterfield, Jennifer Allwood, Jasmine Starr, Stu McLaren, Rachel Hollis. Like there's a lot of people who kind of promote some of their business stuff under their personal brand. So it's kind of one and the same. So I want you to imagine what it would look like if you operated your own podcast. Do you see it being something totally different than what you're already sharing on your social media platforms? Now I'm going to give you a for example. So if you run a product-based business, like something like a physical business where you are, or a physical product, not a physical business, but a physical product where you showcase some, I'm thinking of Peter McKinnon. He is a personal brand. He's actually a YouTuber who teaches videography and photography, and he's super funny. He's awesome. He's awesome, Canadian guy that just does really funny stuff. So he has his own personal brand where he shares a lot about his photography and the work that he does. And then he has a separate account for his products. Like he has his own physical products that he likes to sell, and that is a totally separate Instagram account. I think it's like Pete's Pirate Life, or so, I don't know. I'll link to it in the show notes. I'll figure it out and link to it. But that's an example I'm thinking of. But he has 2 separate accounts for those. Another one is Rachel Hollis. She has Rachel Hollis, like her brand. Then she has the Start Today journals, and then she has the Hollis Co. and multiple different facets of that. So just ask yourself, what do you see? What do you want, right? Do you want to just share your family pictures and keep it personal on Instagram, but maybe do all business on Facebook because that's where your ideal listener mostly hangs out? These are just questions that I want you to think about and just imagine how you want to show up online. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's just a matter of making a decision, choosing the right way for you and going with it. Like I said, I always say this all the time. You can always change it up later. You can decide, oh, I do not want to do that. Or I want to try Pinterest. Or I think I'm going to try Twitter. That seems like I have a business podcast. A lot of business people and leaders are over there. I want to go start targeting. That's fine. You can always change this up later. We are just talking about those of you who are just starting your podcast and you're trying to decide, do I want to have a separate account or do I want it to all be underneath one roof? So once you decide if you want to blend your business and your podcast accounts together, you have to decide if you want to rename them or keep them under your name or your business account. So, or your business name. So all of my accounts, like I said, are under Krystal Profit TX, but I literally talk about everything that I do under that account. And just a side note, my accounts are all business. So, and we'll definitely get into this in a second, but if you go under your settings in any of these platforms, you have the option to choose whether you want your account to be personal or business. And you can choose private. I think that's the other one. Like if you just want to post stuff and only send it to people that you're friends with, that's fine. You can do that as well. But the difference is if you have a personal page, you're going to be limited in what kind of information that these platforms give back to you. So a perfect example, and I'm going to take a few screenshots of my own accounts so you can see what I'm talking about here. But I have a Pinterest page, like a Pinterest account. It used to be personal because that's all it was, guys. Oh my gosh, if you ever need a recipe, please go follow me on Pinterest because for 2 or 3 years, that's all I pinned were Pinterest things. I haven't been on Pinterest, I want to say, for almost a decade. I don't even know how long Pinterest has been around, but I've been on there for a hot minute. So I got lots and lots of recipes. But when I started my business and I decided I'm going to start sharing my podcast stuff there, I switched it to a business account. What happened when I did that? Well, all of a sudden I started getting crazy analytics that I'm like, wow, I can absolutely use this. It tells me how many people, see my pins, the impressions, how many times my stuff is repinned. There's just a lot of really good data that you get whenever you switch it from a personal account to a business account. The same thing with Instagram. I can log into my Instagram on my phone and I can see, okay, these are my top 4 performing posts. This is how many comments, how many likes, all the things. Whereas if you just have a personal page, you don't get to dig into much of that data. Same thing if you only use your Facebook profile and don't have an established business page, you don't get as much analytics. Now, I will be very honest and tell you that Facebook pages from this, let me put like a disclaimer out there. I'm not a social media expert by any means, but I have heard multiple social media experts say Facebook pages aren't meant for you to grow to like hundreds of thousands of followers anymore. That used to be the trend several years ago because you could get a lot of organic reach, but that's not the case anymore. You really want to have a business page. It's kind of like your storefront or your business card, right? Like this is where you're going to post when you have new podcast episodes. And then if you wanted to, you could share those in your Facebook group from your Facebook page. But what's cool is I can look in the analytics of my Facebook page and see
who are the people that have liked my page, and I get a little bit more data on who my audience is and when they're active on like looking at my page and the things that, what they get the most engagement of. It's kind of like Instagram, the likes, the shares, the comments, all the things. I can see which of my podcast episodes are performing really well on social media. So I just wanted to touch on that real fast is I want you to decide whether you're going to just operate as your personal self. And I'm really not going to recommend that because you are limited. You will be limited. If it's not now, it will be in the future on whether you can get all of your analytics or just find out more information about who your audience is and how you can reach them and serve them better. If I'm being honest, like I serve the crap out of my audience because I know y'all so well. I know your quirks. I know what I can look at my stats on all of my social media accounts and see, oh, this performed really well. I need to create more content around it because my people are telling me this is the kind of information that we want from you. So that's how I want you to think of social media. I don't want you to be number chasers and like followers. Like I just need more followers. No. That's not what we're doing. That's not what I'm doing. And people that tell you that are liars. like don't listen to them. I don't care. I could care less about getting hundreds of thousands of followers on social media. My biggest thing on social media is making sure that I am providing content to my audience that makes them want to engage with my podcast, my YouTube channel, or even purchase one of my paid programs. That is the purpose of doing all the things on social media. It's not to get thousands of followers. It's to reach the people that are already interested in what I'm talking about. And if I'm lucky and I'm doing things correctly, then they're going to want to share the information that I'm sharing with them. So that's my little rant about social media. I'm just not a fan of people you got to get thousands and thousands of followers in order to be successful. No, you don't. I've seen it time and time again with people who have tiny lists and tiny social media accounts that make a tremendous impact with the work that they do because they truly care about their people. And that's really what it's about. So the last thing I want to say is if you don't want to blend all of your accounts together, I suggest starting with a basic Facebook group where you can at least create a community for your podcast audience to ask you questions and you can get feedback, but it's also a way to have like a line of two-way communication, right? Because most of the time, if you're just doing solo podcasts, then you are literally just talking to your audience. It's not a two-way line of communication. You're talking at them. They don't have the ability to talk back to you. So make sure you go check out the episode. I'm going to link to it in the show notes. It's all about how to create a Facebook group for your podcast. Because if you're overwhelmed with social media, you're like, there's just too many options. There's TikTok and LinkedIn and like all these, I don't even know where to start. That's where I want you to start. Start with a Facebook group because that is the basis for a community for you to be able to interact with your people. And if you don't like Facebook, what is another platform where you can build an online community? Because that's really what it's about. I want you to just grow a place where people feel safe, where they can ask questions without feeling dumb, right? I hear this all the time in the Facebook group. It's like, I love being able to ask questions and like there are no dumb questions. Like people are starting to really get more active in the Profit Podcast community because they know it's a safe space. I think it took everybody a little bit like, what's going on here? What am I supposed to do? But now I'm starting to see like little heads poking out every once in a while, asking questions like, oh, like I really would love some feedback on this, or here's my idea, or what do you guys think about this? That's what you want. You want to create a community where people are kind of having fun without you, right? It's like you get a little bit of that FOMO, where you're like, oh man, like the party's going on and I'm not even there. But I just get so happy whenever I log into Facebook and I see that there's all this chit chat going on in a Facebook group that I created and I'm not even doing anything. I'm not even actively participating in that group like at that moment. And people are going back and forth, asking questions, answering questions, sharing value, providing feedback. And I just think that that's a fantastic place to start if you just have no idea how to get going. So if you don't want to start with a brand new Facebook group, you can always repurpose a current group that you have. So this is actually something that I did in the beginning. I had a different Facebook group that I started. I'm going to take a wild stab at this. I probably started it in 2015. And I didn't really grow it. I just this was like back when you could just like add people to a whole bunch. I think I added like 100 people that I knew. They're probably all my friends from high school or people that I know from my hometown. And I just threw them all in this group. And I don't even think I posted like once every 3 months or something in there. I didn't post in there very often. But what I did is I didn't want to create a brand new group for the podcast because I don't really like starting at zero. I like to rebrand. And if people decide they don't want to be in there hanging out, that's fine. They can remove themselves. They can leave the group. That's totally fine with me. So that's what I did. So if like starting a brand new community feels a little daunting, that's okay. Start with something you already have and just rebrand it if your ideal listener is already in that group. Now, if your podcast or the content that you plan on creating doesn't align with the people who are already in your group, then yeah, maybe creating a new one would be the better solution. But it's definitely a way for you to build something without starting at zero. So that's it, guys. So I'm going to do a quick recap. So first of all, we talked about all the options that you have for your podcast on social media. Remember, we talked about Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all of those. And I know that you can feel like, oh my gosh, I have to be in all the places every day, all the time. How do I keep up with comments and engagement and, get more followers and do all the things? You don't. You can't do it unless you have a whole team of people working with you. So my suggestion is I want you to pick one platform that without fail, every single time you put out a brand new podcast episode, you're going to put out a soundbite or a quote from your episode or a graphic or just a small, quick synopsis of what you talked about in that episode every single week. One platform, whichever one you choose. I don't care. I don't have a preference on any of these. I just committed to Facebook and Instagram for my podcast and LinkedIn. I started posting more on LinkedIn too. So I committed to showing up on those every single time I posted a new episode. Every time. Doesn't even matter what else is going on. Every time there's a new episode of the podcast, I am putting a post up. And there are ways that you can streamline this. Actually, if you go listen to the episode, The Ultimate Podcast Checklist, you'll see how I actually do this. And I've streamlined a lot of the processes for the podcast. So make sure you go listen to that episode. I'm going to link to it in the show notes. But that can help you figure out some processes where you can make marketing your podcast a lot easier. And then the next thing we talked about is, you got to decide, are you going to have a personal page or are you going to do a business page? I'm going to push you to suggest you need to do a business page, whether you want to do it under your own brand or like a personal brand or under the podcast itself, have its own thing. That's fine. But I'm going to suggest you do a business account wherever you do it because you're going to get better analytics that way. And the last thing we talked about is, if all else fails, start a Facebook group. If you have no idea how to get started, I'm telling you, that's where you should get started. But that's all I have for you today. So make sure you go check out the show notes, krystalprofit.com/episode 167. And if you are brand new to this podcast, I am so happy that you're here. I would love it if you would subscribe to the show, leave us a rating and a review. Let me know what you thought. Take a screenshot wherever you're listening to this and share it out on social media. Tell me what your number one takeaway was. And I cannot wait to talk to you again next time. But remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners, thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message because I want to hear from you.
we are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Krystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Krystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.